She wasn't murdered, was she? No signs of struggle, no skin fragments under the fingernails, no defensive wounds, no hair or fiber evidence?
My, I guess your father is right. You do want to be a detective.
Evidence 101. She wasn't murdered, was she?
I'm a forensic pathologist. I speak for the dead. I discover how victims die and try to make the killers pay. There are other kinds of pathologists that deal with living persons and save lives.
The courts have had to accommodate changing conceptions of the role, nature, and potential misuse of science, and to incorporate these into their own checks and balances. A landmark U.S. case in 1923 was that of Fry versus the United States, based on the then new technology of lie detection. The court held that to qualify as a field for expert opinion, a science or technology must be sufficiently established to have gained general acceptance in the field in which it belongs. This rule was certainly very convenient to those who needed to appoint a scientist or other expert. Merely get someone with proper certification. The work has been done for you, as they have been certified by a rigorous process of peer review. An ideal CV would be that of the practical, pioneering, technical scientist, esteemed by peers, appearing in court almost as an afterthought, dragged in only because of their eminence.
My name is Dame So-and-so, I am a professor of technical science. I hold a PhD and several postgraduate degrees, I have 40 years' experience, innumerable publications in leading journals, famous books, Queen's Honours, Nobel Prize mention, listed for 30 years in Who's Who, elected as spokeswoman for the profession blah blah blah,
etc., etc. Just hire such a person and their evidence will easily meet the Fry criteria. There are just a few problems with this approach. 1. It may be a new area. The case may involve a question totally new to science. In recent years, we've had AIDS, Ebola, and SARS as outbreaks of diseases as then unknown to science. Scientists experienced and qualified in infection control, microbiology, virology, etc., could all claim to be likely to be relevant as experts on these diseases, but none could have claimed to have been an expert on the particular disease when it broke out, nor could they claim to have a technology specially adapted to the new disease. Professions value self-regulation. The danger is that their allegiance is to protect each other rather than the public. They continue to offer support even to colleagues who are totally out of line. Professions can also become an orthodoxy, which labels any negative or critical comment which challenges anything, whether accepted view or even a bizarre view or a grotesque misconduct by a colleague, as heresy. Professions may usurp the authority of a court.
If it is given dressed up in scientific jargon, it may make judgment more difficult. The fact that an expert witness has impressive scientific qualifications does not by that fact alone make his opinion on matters of human nature and behavior, within the limits of normality, any more helpful than that to the jurors themselves. But there is a danger that they may think it does.
There are big money incentives for outright fraud. Intelligent but unscrupulous persons may well be attracted to the high fees available for expert evidence which supports big money interests. Indeed, this is so widespread that the industry has terms such as hired gun and chop doctor, which refers to the ability to chop a claim, to describe this type of malpractice, as well as books written on it, such as Hagen's Whores of the Court. In light of such considerations, the Fry tradition was reviewed in the 1990s, and the landmark U.S. decision Daubert versus Merrill Dow forced the courts to go back to basics and examine the claims of scientific credibility in the following terms.
Technique can be and has been tested, can be falsified, subjected to peer review and publication, known or potential rate of error, existence and maintenance of standards controlling the technique's operation, provide general acceptance in the field.
Daubert is reminiscent of the utilitarian cynicism of the Wizard of Oz in the movie version, conferring a diploma on the Scarecrow.
Back where I come from, we have universities, seats of great learning where men go to become great thinkers. And when they come out, they think deep thoughts. And with no more brains than you have. But they have one thing you haven't got. A diploma.
Daubert, in like manner, dismisses the monopoly conferred by mere diplomas and peer status. It allows that anyone might have some unique expertise in some area, but for it to be valued in a courtroom, it would be judged on its standards of scientific method, not merely acceptance by peers. The role of expert witnesses from all scientific backgrounds has evolved cautiously. They are called on by the court to explain and interpret technical and/or complex issues to the court. Their opinions are not meant to bypass or supersede the opinions of the jury or the judge, but are supposed to serve as a concise summary of the implications of the evidence. Their opinions are to be about their area of expertise, not about the ultimate issue, such as who should get custody of the children or is this person guilty of a crime. The ultimate issue in our legal systems is not part of the expert's role, i.e., negligence or guilt are ultimate issues to be tried by peers or judges, not by some appointed elite of experts, whatever their apparent credibility. Centuries of religious and political trials and inquisitions have taught the value of an independent judiciary and trial by peers. Lord Hewart put the issues very well in 1928.
The work of a court involves many important ingredients, as for example, that the judge is identified and is personally responsible for his decisions. That the case, subject to rare exceptions, is conducted in public. That the result is governed by the impartial application of principles which are known and established. And that all parties to the controversy are fully and fairly heard. In other words, the decision of a court is in every important respect sharply contrasted with the edict, however benevolent, of some hidden authority, however capable, depending upon a process of reasoning which is not stated and the enforcement of a scheme which is not explained. The administration of the law of the land in the ordinary courts presupposes, at least, personal responsibility, publicity, uniformity, and the hearing of the parties.
The expert witness ought to be called in at the last minute as a mere interpreter of evidence too complex or obscure for the lay jurors and judges to be expected to follow without a special training. In New South Wales courts, these issues have been spelled out in detail in the Expert Witness Code of Conduct.
An expert witness has an overriding duty to assist the court impartially on matters relevant to the expert's area of expertise. An expert witness's paramount duty is to the court and not to the person retaining the expert. An expert witness is not an advocate for a party. The expert's report must specify the person's qualifications as an expert and the facts, matters and assumptions on which the opinions in the report are based, reasons for each opinion expressed, and if applicable that a particular question or issue falls outside his or her field of expertise, and any literature or other materials utilized in support of the opinions, and any examinations, tests or other investigations on which he or she has relied, and identify, and give details of the qualifications of the person who carried them out.
The expert opinion is a convenience to the court. It is meant to be a succinct interpretation and summary based on the facts. It is not meant in any way to be a judgment on the ultimate matter before the court, such as guilt or innocence or negligence. Nor is it intended to add a veneer of science to what is really just an opinion based on a matter of common knowledge. However, there are gray areas. For example, malingering is regarded as a medical diagnosis and may also be a legal consideration in the ultimate issue of deliberate attempts to mislead a court or obtain money through fraudulent misrepresentation. It is also common knowledge that the amounts of money available in a legal settlement are usually quite large compared to an average wage. The New South Wales Evidence Act sections on expert evidence have accepted that there are circumstances under which the expert must comment to some extent on the ultimate issue of the case, and that they must also make comment on things which are common knowledge arising from their particular expertise. Psychology, unlike medicine with its much longer and more complex history, began as a science. It arose purely out of curiosity about personality and thinking processes. The first psychological tests appeared at the dawn of the 20th century. Applications of this new science to social and medical problems largely arose because of the two world wars. There was a need to quickly screen and allocate millions of volunteers and conscripts into suitable military duties based on their abilities and inclinations. Prior to the use of tests, this had been based largely on social class. A tangible result of the influence of psychology was the World War I vintage Army Alpha test of intelligence, which was the forerunner of today's generation of IQ and neuropsychology tests. After the wars, there was a need to assess the nature of the returning soldiers' brain injuries and post-traumatic stress reactions and develop treatments and preventive strategies for future wars. Thus, clinical psychology did not develop because of the increased awareness of mental health problems. It was a war baby. A good illustration of this point is the development of the famous Wechsler Intelligence Scale for Children, the WISC. It started life as an alternative, Form B, of the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale, the WAIS, to be used for screening soldiers in the coming Cold War. As the Cold War failed to heat up and the World War II soldiers had more babies, the WAIS Form B was pressed into service as a children's test and rebadged as the WISC. It has only been since the 1950s that the various branches of psychology have moved away from their military origins toward the needs of other sectors such as hospitals, clinical psychology, neuropsychology, and the legal system with forensic psychology. From their origin as interest groups, each of these in turn has sought recognition as a distinct professional specialty, and the respective colleges and special interest groups vie for special treatment and funding. In New South Wales, the profession had long resisted attempts to give such divisions any statutory support. Indeed, clinical and forensic psychologists are supposed to have neuropsychological assessment as part of their skill base. The Australian Psychological Society recommended fee structure recognizes no hierarchy, as psychological, clinical, and neuropsychological assessments are all charged at identical rates. Much has been written about the greed in the guise of public interest behind the push to professional registration in the USA, for example Tenov in 1975, but it was well captured in Australia by journalist Christine Hurd, who had been wined and dined by members of the Australian Psychological Society.
Despite a concerted effort to improve their status, they are still at best considered only the second cousins of psychiatrists, to some people a damning association in itself.